This is the Griffin Realty Group Ask-A-Griffin podcast, episode number 22. How do you avoid being defensive about negative feedback when you're selling? Are you a home seller or buyer who has questions about selling or buying residential property, but you can't find an easy way to get your answers? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Griffin Realty Group and the host of the Ask-A-Griffin podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the near future, you can take advantage of our free step-by-step guides waiting for you at griffincourses.com. You want to get this right the first time. All right, let's get started. In this episode, I want to talk about how do you avoid being defensive about negative feedback when you're selling your property. Well, the first point is that you need to, first of all, recognize that the opinions of the buyers and the buyer's agents matters. You see, this is a market-making activity. A lot of people get confused when I say that. Well, what do you mean market-making? See, we're just programmed to think about, marketing. And most people don't even understand what marketing is in its reality inside this business, let alone how it relates to selling a property. You see, what's much more powerful than marketing is the marketplace itself, the multiple listing service. The place within which the listing agent shares your listing and invites anybody and everybody that's working with a buyer who's interested to come and see it. That's the mechanism that we're talking about. So there's an efficiency to the marketplace, presuming several things have happened. Number one, that you have done a good job at pricing it right. Somebody has taken the time to talk to you about the math, not just yesed you, not just bought the listing, quote unquote, by accepting a made up number, because it's much more price sensitive than you think when it comes to selling a property, even in a good market, which can turn very quickly. So in our market, for example, Boston has been very good for a long time. You could almost be close enough, like a game of horseshoes with pricing, and the rising tide would find you. 88% of the time from MLS, a buyer's agent calls the listing agent and says, I would like to show the property at such and such a time. So when you see those co-broke showings, that's how the business works. And the other 12% of the time, and again, I'm using metrics that fluctuate, but let's just say that you could be conservative. 85% of the time, a property gets sold from one brokerage to a next, one agent to another. Even internally at a company, it would be high to say more than 10 or 15% of their deals are done internally as a company. So that's just a fact of the matter. So you're going to get buyers that come with buyer's agents, and those folks hopefully are going to give you feedback. And that opinion, their opinion matters. Think about it. If a buyer comes to your property and they are a serious buyer working with a serious buyer agent who has vetted them, made sure there's a real reason for them to buy, has also vetted their financial wherewithal to do so, well, this is exactly why you list your property on the multiple listing service, so you have maximum exposure. And when they come through, believe me, you want their feedback. Why? There is a very high probability that your property is not the only one they're looking at or have looked at. They've done their vetting of properties online and physically. They've gone to see what they've gone to see. And so they are making an opinion happen based on a comparison. Now, I know you as the seller want to defend your property. So do I when I've listed my own properties. However, it's best to really try to get out of the fact that it's your home. You've personalized it. It means something to you. You paid a certain price for it. All those factors matter to you. And I feel that. However, all that matters when you go to sell it is what is the feedback that is coming from the buyers and the buyers' agents who are coming there. And quite frankly, if there are no buyers and buyers' agents coming either directly or with their agents, then you have a pricing problem or a really big market problem, meaning something has dramatically happened externally. There's an external problem, whether it's a massive shift in the economy, we've now experienced a pandemic. Those things are true, real external forces that can weigh upon the ability for you to get anybody through the property. But most of the time, regardless of those external circumstances, a price adjustment is necessary. So my theory is, why didn't you just start off in the beginning by taking your time to truly try to reconcile the differences between your property and ones that have sold? And I know it's difficult. I had a seller tell me this week alone, look, there really are no comparables to mine because I combined 2 units, etc. I get it. However, there is indeed a comparable. Somebody with a couple of $1 million in that case has choices. So how far away do they have to go to other buildings, other areas to find alternatives? And what did that money buy? Even if it wasn't in your building, what's turning over and why? See, that all comes first. So we have to do all that homework first, because if we don't, we're setting ourselves up to be more sensitive to critique. So let me get to the next point here. The next point, after recognizing that the opinions of buyers and buyers agents matter, is to recognize that negative feedback, I know it's going to sound tough to swallow this, or it'll be tough to swallow, is recognize that negative feedback is helpful because it actually is telling you how to adjust. Now, I'm not talking about derogatory negative feedback, and I've seen that. And if you're an agent out there, don't do that. Don't waste people's time with some negative, over-the-top reaction that's all about you. I don't know what you're trying to achieve by doing that, but it doesn't help the marketplace. It helps to get negative feedback to the extent that you're making a comparison. Look, we saw these other properties that all had these other features that yours didn't at this price range, whether it be a garage, whether it be a better view, whether it be a better building, whatever it is. I get it that that's negative feedback. So as the agent, I appeal to you, be constructive in the negative feedback. But as the seller, I'm telling you that with your listing agent, you want to listen to all of it. When it comes in, we want to be careful that we don't let that inner child have an attack and really become defensive. It's just feedback. This is just business. I get why people get emotional because it's home. We're not selling a commodity that we're less emotionally attached to. We're selling this sense of home. This is the place that we personalize, unless, of course, it's just an investment property, which now you get defensive because you paid a certain amount, put too much money in. Those things can happen. I understand. But the key is we want the negative feedback because the faster we can get it, the better off we are because we can quickly make adjustments. Again, let me go all the way back to the beginning of this. The first negative feedback, ironically, is nobody wants to physically come and see your property. I call that the Tumbleweed Effect. You can see in an old Western movie, the tumbleweeds are blowing down the lonely street where there are no buyers and no buyer's agents requesting to come to the property. That's a pricing problem, period. Yes, it can be caused by a lot of factors, but it's a pricing problem. That's why I went all the way back to the beginning. That is negative feedback. Nobody's coming. So make that price adjustment quickly. Bite the bullet if you have a real reason to sell. And I hope you do before you go through this process. You want to make that adjustment. But now they come in, and it's not necessarily the price alone they're critiquing. They are critiquing the property against other properties. Yes, price is a factor. I can go down to the next building. I can go up to the next floor. I can go to the next neighborhood, whatever, and get a better deal. And here are the features and benefits of that better deal. That's fantastic feedback. To be able to get that, because the subtleties of the adjustments are really only within typically a few percentage points of where you're at. Now, of course, physically, if you can recondition the property, this is why we please say, if you're going to sell, go to griffincourses.com and get the seller course so that you are prepared properly when it comes to conditioning. Because if there are expectations of achieving the best result, you want to make sure the property is conditioned. If you're willing to spend money to recondition a property, get it up to speed for today's expectations, then by all means do so prior to listing. If it needs to be staged because the spaces aren't clear, and it's not typically for most buyers don't have a vision for how a property is staged, hire a pro to do so. Bring in some furniture, move yours around, get all that done. Because those are the things that are really going to help you compete fairly. See, you're the problem when those things aren't done and you're overpriced. You're the problem. But once those things are done, you've closed the gap. You're much closer than you would be without having taken those steps first. So very, very important to understand that. So now if you've done those things first with a good plan before you list it, the feedback that comes in that's negative is probably a little bit softer. Meaning it's much more so about, oh, they just preferred the view at this one, or they liked the building over there, or the neighborhood was better here. The space was too much, too little, whatever it might be. It's just black and white when it comes to comparison. And it just didn't fit that person, and there's probably not much you can do about it. Now, of course, if there are a lot of showings and we're going on and on without an offer and we're not finding anybody, we still probably have a pricing adjustment we need to pull more buyers in from the lower end of the range. Maybe that's where it's at, and that's the feedback, okay? Now, the last point here, and I'm going to go back to this feedback. You need to, with your listing agent, decipher the difference between honest and patronizing feedback. Let me explain. We use a systematic approach that when buyers' agents come through, we have them surveyed and they answer the survey. And a lot of folks that their buyers weren't interested, they can give very harsh, honest feedback, and that's pretty much there. But like I said, I've seen some feedback that was just absolutely useless. I mean, if you really thought negatively about the property, are you saying that, or did the buyer say that? I mean, I've seen some agents just go off on their opinion, and their opinion alone, as it relates to their buyer agent, I'm not so much interested in that if it's not going to be constructive. If it's constructive, hey, look, my buyer didn't like it because of the layout, but I thought you should know this. Great. That's wonderful. Be honest, be direct. But some of the feedback you want to be careful of as a seller is almost counterintuitive. We'll have a lot of agents who will bring their buyer to a property and they won't like it for some reason. And in the survey, they'll say it's priced perfectly. Okay? You want to be careful of that kind of feedback too. That, I mean, again, if it was priced perfectly and you gave it a 5, what's the real reason your buyers didn't make a full price offer? You see what I'm saying? Some of the feedback, the agents are the other extreme. They're so nice that it's really not constructive at all. So we have to decipher all this. And by the way, as the listing agent, I believe you should pick up the phone and clarify feedback. Mechanisms like that are wonderful. And most buyer agents will give you a proper feedback from the showing because they respect that you took the time to set up the showing with them and they appreciate it. But we need to decipher it. And if it's not decipherable, we need to pick up the phone and go deeper for the seller. And if you're a listing agent, don't be lazy when it comes to that because you really want to be able to communicate properly. If you want to be in good stead with your seller, you want to be able to communicate. And if you're a seller, you should be demanding that of your agent. What really happened here? And I don't mean don't be all over your agent to go deeper than they can get. If somebody's picked up the phone, they've talked to the other agent, they've done the best that they could to get the feedback, and they've delivered it to you, and there's no offer coming, they've done everything they can do. You can't force a buyer. And I see a lot of you sellers going over the top, trying to say, well, did you tell them this? Did you tell them? Look, when somebody's interested in a property, a good agent knows. But a good agent doesn't stand right on top of people when they're showing the property to say, hey, look at the nails here. Hey, look at, you do a quick introduction of the features and benefits of the property so that when somebody's going through it, they understand it comparatively so that when they go out and look at others, they can remember the key points. If somebody likes the building well enough, the location well enough, the property well enough, they will want to go to another level of questions. I just experienced that this weekend where somebody went through themselves after I gave them the highlights And everybody looks at properties differently. In one case, the husband went all through every little micro detail and had a fistful of questions. The wife more so sat in the main room looking at, you could see how she was feeling it intuitively. You have to let people have that process. You don't stand right on top of them, overselling them, or now they can't even remember what happened. If somebody wants to go to a second level, they will go to a second level. But you defending your property to them is not helpful. All right. So let me go back and review this. How do you avoid becoming defensive about feedback, especially negative feedback? Number one, recognize first that all opinions of buyers and buyers agents matter to begin with. That's the marketplace speaking. You need to turn your open ears and open minds to it. Two, recognize that negative feedback is actually helpful because it's telling you how to adjust against the competition. That's what this is. It's a competitive situation. And lastly, decipher between real honest feedback, whether it's harsh, indirect or not, and patronizing feedback, especially patronizing feedback where they say everything was so wonderful, but yet their buyer wasn't interested. You have to be careful of that feedback. You want real and honest feedback so you can do something with it or not. Sometimes people just say, just didn't work for them. Had a case today, feedback came in, wonderful property, gorgeous, it's just too much house for them. Can't do anything about that. Can't shrink the house down. All right, let me chunk it up this way. If you are receiving feedback from buyers and buyers agents, that's good news because you don't have to guess at what they're thinking. However, the key is to look for the most honest feedback and decide on what adjustments need to be made and should be made. All right, now remember, like I say at the beginning of this podcast, I'll say at the end, you can take immediate action if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the near future by getting our free step-by-step guides at griffincourses.com. griffincourses.com. We give you a free seller guide, a free buying guide. You need to slow down, take a beat, and get a plan. Stop rushing out there. Think about this strategically because really, you always need to think about exit strategy. Someday your life will change and you will need to sell the property you bought. And even if you love the one you're in now, you'll need to sell it when life changes. All right, don't forget, if you like this podcast in general and you like to hear all of these episodes on an ongoing basis, you can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and you won't miss out on these insights each time we upload an episode. And we follow a formulaic approach here. I'm actually going through the tips in the seller plan. Then I'm going to do a series on the buyer plan. And we'll continue to repeat those with new insights as the marketplace changes. We also post all these episodes on our social media channel. So if you want to follow instead on social media, you can just go turn on notifications for Griffin Realty Group. We have the little gold crest of the Griffin, the flying Griffin, wings and head of an eagle and the body of a lion. Pretty cool, huh? Go find us over there and you won't miss the reminders. We'd also appreciate it if you would share our content or just leave your comments here because we would love to know what you're thinking, what's most important to you, and we'll deal with that right here in the podcast. Hey, thanks for listening, but remember this. If you do need to buy or sell now or in the near future, nobody's coming for you. So take action and get to work on your own plan for buying or selling property, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.